welcome back to the good news. Brian Watson is back. You heard him earlier in the week, and he's given his testimony on the show as well. Brian is a real inspiration to me. I really admire the way that he teams up Christ and business together, because Christ can be in business and Christ can be involved with a successful business. In fact, I invited you on once, Brian, to talk about this debate I'd had with someone saying that, well, you have to fudge and lie a little bit in business. I'm like, no, my friend Brian doesn't do that. And so you actually had that discussion with me on the radio.
Yeah, and I'm always honored to be on your show. I love your
Thank
good news
you.
and all the things you share.
Well, the new book that you wrote, and Brian's background is in commercial real estate, North Star Commercial Partners, and he's given his testimony, and his business to me stands out and has inspired me because really you and one other friend of mine, Jim Stovall, you make money to give money. And I'm not saying every cent, but you make money to give a lot of money, but not just in the form of here's a check, but you actually do projects which improve neighborhoods and improve the educational system through your investments.
Yes. Well, we really believe in connecting our passions with our profession, and the Lord just gave us the opportunity to do that on the platform of commercial real estate. So we own assets in 18 states throughout America. Our specialty, about 80% of the time, is buying vacant buildings and going in and creating jobs and opportunity and empowering people in those buildings. And then we also buy vacant buildings for schools where kids can go and get a great education, and we really believe that's so important in American society today.
And some of those buildings make such cool schools. Some of those old buildings that you wouldn't think, well, that could really be repurposed as a school. Now, the reason Brian's here today is because his book is coming out. And I love it when you said on Facebook, you said, my first book. And I thought, well, that's because there's going to be a second. And so, you and I have talked about writing before. I too, have been told many times that I should write a book. But actually sitting down and doing it with your schedule is quite an accomplishment. The book is The 7 Rings, A Journey to a Balanced Life, a Peace, Passion, and Purpose, Brian Watson. I want you to talk about this, but before we start, there was a book that you always mention that you said was life-changing to you in building your company.
Absolutely. Well, I mentioned it in this book, and it is my first book, and it's the book Halftime, and written by Bob Buford. And Bob asked this question of that, in the beginning of one's life, the first half of your life, most people are focusing on this thing called worldly success. Where do you want to graduate from? Where do you want to work, etc.?
What should your degree be in so you sound more important?
Exactly.
What will impress people?
Exactly. And so when you go into the locker room for the halftime of your life, what do you want the second half of your life to look like? And hopefully you're making this transition from success to significance. And significance is about having a legacy, blessing others, etc. And I learned at a young age, and I mentioned this in my book, my stepfather passed away on the floor in front of me when I was 16 years of age. And he was very young. And I realized from that moment, after I read the book Halftime, that none of us know when the halftime of our life is. We may be in the fourth quarter with a few seconds left on the clock, and that's the Lord's will, or we may just be going into the second quarter. But the point is to make sure that you're living your life well and that you're doing it with a significant impact for others.
And I think that significant impact for others is something that can fall by the wayside when we're kind of redlining our lives and racing kids to basketball practice and trying to get to Bible study and waking up at 3:30 to do my other radio show. I think that can take the way rear seat, in like a big sedan, you know what I mean? And so it's like, oh, I'll get to that.
Yeah.
And so this is going to teach us how to make sure that making an impact and leading a life of significance, a priority that can be done alongside raising our children and being in business. I'm going to go through some of the chapters, but let's start too with the introduction about what will you do with your life today. I think many of us are waiting for that call from the Lord, that what's my calling? And I don't think you really get your calling like in the lazy boy of life. I think you actually have to get up and start taking steps forward, and people are confused about what their purpose is. So will that help us when we, work through this book with finding purpose?
Well, first of all, I don't have all the answers. And I wrote the book because I saw so many books that were either the get-rich-quick scheme in commercial real estate, right?
Yeah.
And how to become this best person in 27 days. And then I saw books by pastors and theologians, all well-intentioned, but they really hadn't gone through some of the things that I had gone through with business.
Right.
And so this book shows a lot of my own personal underbelly, and it's a book about coming alongside and encouragement, not a 27-step program of how to improve oneself. But in the introduction, I really do talk about this idea that each of us has been given this amazing gift of life, and that we shouldn't squander it. And whether you can give of your time, your talent, or your treasure, you can go out and bless others. And that's really what the focus of the book is. And then talking about these prioritizations in one's life and what does that look like for each individual person.
And I'm sure people think, because you are successful, well, Brian can give of his treasures, but all of us can give of our time and our talent. And a lot of talents, I think we overlook as being something that can hold significance for others. And some of the simple things that we do, like just recently when my family volunteered at the rescue mission, I had no idea that my husband was such a great dishwasher. So he's in the back and he's like it was like 3 hours of heavy dishwashing, and he did it in high school. And so when they said, well, okay, we're going to train you guys, he goes, I don't need any training. I did this, all through high school. And so there was his gift. And I liked interacting with the people. So I was out in front talking to people and serving people. And sometimes I think we think that our gifts aren't important. But it certainly was that night, because a couple of the guys in the drug addiction program got the night off.
Yeah. When I talk about that in the book, each of us has been given unique talents, unique experiences. And whether you're just giving a positive word to someone, that may be one of your life's purposes. We think it's all these grand, big things, but it might be that one moment in time
you're a good
where
encourager.
you show love and you encourage. Or you might be washing a dish that helps somebody. You just never know. And so our goal is to continue to serve, continue to plant seeds, and to be known for that love and service.
And by planting seeds, every day isn't going to be that big day that something huge grows.
Absolutely.
It might take time for something that you believe huge to come out of all of your efforts.
Yep. And as humans, we don't always like to be patient
Right,
and have to be in the Lord's time.
All right, so in the introduction, what will you do with your life today? And then let's work through some of the things that you teach us, or at least to show us what you've learned through your journey.
You bet. So over the years, I've developed these 7 rings of prioritization in my life. And for me, at the center of my life is a relationship with the Lord. And you may define that as different things, but at the end of the day, it's about having a firm foundation that you can depend upon, rely upon, etc. The second ring for me is a relationship with my wife. And then the third ring is my children, and it goes on and on from there. Most people put their children at the center of their marriage.
And
after 20 years of marriage and running around to soccer practice and all the other things for the kids, in good meaning, unfortunately, they don't know or like each other anymore because they've been focusing on their children the whole time.
Right.
So in my life, I put the Lord at the center because that's a firm foundation that I can reflect upon. That then emanates out to the different rings. And the relationship with my wife, next to my relationship with the Lord, is the most important relationship in my life. And my kids are a welcome part of that marriage, but they're not the only reason why we are married. And so it emanates out to these different rings, and the final ring for me is the 7th ring. And looking at me, a lot of people may think, well, he's a business person, and business must be number 1 or 2 of the most important things in his life.
Right, because it is for many people.
Yeah, and it isn't very important to me. But at the end of the day, it's not the most important. In fact, it's the 7th and last ring.
Really?
And it's because it helps to fuel and provide financial resources to all the other internal rings, my family, my God, resources, serving the community, etc.
So somebody listening is going to be like, you're successful. You can put it 7th now. Because you've reached, a certain level of success. They're not going to believe that really is 7th. It really is 7th.
It is 7th. And, as a business owner and entrepreneur, I employ over 40 people, and we own assets in 18 states across America. Every single day, we have a huge responsibility to make sure that we're meeting payroll, make sure that we're meeting our bills, et cetera, because people's mortgages and kids' education, et cetera, they're very dependent. But in terms of prioritization, I make sure that I say, you know what, it's within the Lord's will. And yes, we have been blessed with financial resources, but these rings have been with me and developed through the crash of 2008 when we lost everything. My wife and I lost every dime that we had, and we were millions of dollars in the hole during that time frame.
Very stressful.
Painful. Yeah, and you know what? That's one of the things that I outline in the book, because it's not all about unicorns and rainbows.
Right.
You know what? This is life, and it's stressful. And sometimes, and I talk about, I have a chapter in there about who my heroes are and mentors, because when I was a kid, we had heroes and mentors. And one of my heroes in there is Job, for instance. And I talk about this idea that when Job was tested and he lost everything, and then how the Lord blessed him because of his faithfulness. And so whether we're at a mountaintop or in the valley, our goal is to be loving to the Lord and service to the Lord. And then good things will happen one way or the other from there.
And I think the challenge for many people, and I'm not excluding myself from this challenge either, is finding joy in the valley and at the peak, right? And so finding joy in the journey. I talked to my
Yes.
husband a lot about that because he's in the midst of a startup and 3 years in. And I said, you're so blessed to be able to even have the opportunity with 3 kids to walk away from a very good salary and a very good career to start with nothing and make nothing. I said, so can't you enjoy the journey? Because we are supposed to find the joy in the midst of all of that. And so many people, I think, even Christians, we think that we'll be happy when, it'll be good when, you get the job, you get the promotion, you get the house, you get the car. But I think the life of a Christian, as you mentioned, isn't rainbows and unicorns. That the minute you accept Christ as your Savior, the sun doesn't come out and, the clouds part and then everything is great from then them on. I think that when Christ is holding your hand through everything in life, that's what makes it, bearable when you are at the bottom.
Absolutely. Our God isn't a sugar daddy. And
That's a good way
at
to
the end of
put
the
it.
day, he is very good and he's always good, but it's not from a worldly perspective as
Right.
humans might define it. One of the poems that I share in there, I love quotes and poems, is a poem by the name of Ithaca. And it talks about this idea, and I have it ever since I was young. It's actually on my desk, framed. And it talks about this idea of trying to reach this place called Ithaca. But along the way, which is your goal to get there, make sure that you enjoy the journey because there's so much rich rewards and blessing.
Yeah.
And even at the end, if you don't reach this thing called Ithaca, that you have been blessed by the journey.
Right.
And oftentimes the
I like
idea of
that.
Ithaca changes in our life. What was once the creme de la creme of
Yeah.
success or what we wanted to achieve, as we mature and get older and have experiences, we realize, you know what? Maybe that isn't all what it's cracked up to
Isn't
be.
that true?
Yeah.
Ithaca changes.
So true.
Right.
And to be open in that and to realize none of us know how long we have to live
Right.
and to make sure that every day is counted as a blessing.
I think I've told you about my friend who lost his son when he was 9. His name was Quentin, and he always says to me, and he's changed the way that I raise my kids. And he said to me, Angie, you have a chance to pay attention to your kids. You have a chance to be present. I don't have a chance to be there for Quentin now because he was a workaholic, and he admittedly didn't spend the time he wanted with him. And so he's taught me when my kids come in the room to put down my Facebook. If I'm doing an interview and I'm at my home studio, I'll put my finger up, or it's 2 minutes or whatever, and let them know that's when I'll be done and you can open the door.
Yep.
And putting down your iPad when they walk in the room, looking them in the eyes, not just saying, mm-hmm. And you're right, Ithaca has changed for me, and that they're a big part of that Ithaca now, just being like connected with them and spending time with them.
Yeah.
And taking, this is just an aside, but specifically in my job, I took less money because I said I needed time with my kids, and that's not popular sometimes to say, I want more vacation time so when my kids are off from school, I can be with them. It can be frowned upon, but you know what? You just have to do what you have to do to be right with God and your family.
Yeah, and what a blessing and that you're doing in that. And I talk about that in the third ring about children, that children are some of the greatest blessings that we will ever have an impact. My family told me when I was young, Brian, you'll be a blessed man if you could impact one life for the better. And if the Lord gives you a platform to impact hundreds or thousands or millions, so be it, but focus on the one. Well, for those that have children, we can focus first and foremost
Right.
on our children and being there. And I talk about in that chapter about this idea of being present. Because of the technology and everything that we have going on in society,
Easy
we
to
can be with our
disconnect.
kids but not be there. And so it's a struggle sometimes. One of the things that that we have with our family is that we have no technology during dinner is one simple act.
Yeah.
This idea of asking our kids, how was your day? Let's talk about subjects.
We
et
do the
cetera.
rose, the thorn, and the bud. My kids love it. What was your rose of the day? What was your thorn of the day? And
love
they'll
it.
even say, like, you didn't wait for my thorn. No, it's my turn for my thorn. And so they go around, what was the beautiful part of your day? The rose, the thorn, obviously something difficult. And then the bud is something they learned or are looking forward to. They love to do that. And then my other mentor I told you about, Jim Stovall, his grandmother, when he was going blind, he's blind, and he's such a successful businessman, and he was going to be in the NFL, lost his vision, and he went to his grandmother to complain, and she said, look, as soon as I want to hear all your complaints, but I want you to write your golden list, which is 10 things that you're thankful for, and then come back. And he said every time he did that, he had no complaints. And so I put that into my own children's lives on the way to school. They're in elementary school, so they do 5 things. Mm-hmm. But I think it's really changed, flipped a switch in their lives about what to focus on. And they know it's a trick too when grandma gets angry because grandma drives them to school. Then they said, let's do our golden list. And then she goes, oh, Okay, I'd love to. Okay, you first. It completely changes her mood when they do the golden list.
I love it. I feel like you've almost read my book already, and I just gave you a copy.
Oh,
But in there,
gosh.
I talk about that as well. That one, sometimes with our kids, it's like prying nails, right? Trying to get information and get them
Yes.
engaged. But it's the
Yes.
simple little acts like that that make a world of difference.
And training them to talk to us.
Training them. And then the other thing that I mentioned in the book is that when I'm at my lowest point, and we all have our low points,
Right.
my prayer to the Lord is, first of all, to start being thankful for all the things that I take for granted. The ability to touch, see, feel, taste, enjoy a scenery, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And then by the time you get to your issue at hand, it often helps to put it in perspective. It doesn't diminish it, but it helps to put it into perspective. And then the other part of my prayer to the Lord on a given day is, Lord, your will, not mine. And as Christians, we know that's probably one of the most dangerous prayers that we can ever pray to the Lord, because you never know where that one's going to take you.
I know. But to open the door to that takes some courage. One thing that I notice a lot that that you do that I see is you do make the time, and I know how busy you are. I see where you travel all over the world, and a lot of your trips take you away from your family. But I'll see pictures, much like myself, where we're at sporting events, we're at the game, we found a way to get to the choir concert or the school party or horseback riding. You and Patricia horseback ride. So obviously, those experiences, that time with your family, you see that as more important than giving them something.
Absolutely. Experiences are the utmost importance to us. Even during Christmas time, my gifts usually to the family are experience gifts. And it's this idea of, whether we're building a sandcastle on the beach or going for a walk in the park or riding our horses, it's the idea of spending time together. Because the stuff will come and go. And we really try to focus on those experiences and building those memories together.
A lot of my friends will say, you guys always have such fun, because I love adventures. And, you do all these things, and they think like maybe it's expensive. It's not expensive. There's so many things you can do. One of our favorite things, too, is blossoms of light at Christmas, like to go at night.
Love that.
And just things that you can do together outside, outdoors. There's so many things that you can do together as a family. It doesn't always have to be a movie that you pay for. It doesn't always have to be an expensive museum. There are so many things that you can do together. What do you want the takeaway to be? Again, we're talking to Brian Watson, author of The 7 Rings, A Journey to a Balanced Life of Peace, Passion, and Purpose. What do you want people, what would be your dream for someone to read this book? What would the takeaway be?
Well, I didn't write this book to make money. In fact, 100% of the proceeds are being donated to my foundation at the National Christian Foundation and just being given away. I wrote this book for one reason, and that is to bless and impact one life. And whether someone reads this and it gives them a prioritization and having them think about these 7 rings in their own life, whether it has them think about spending some more time with their kids or healing a relationship that has been damaged over the years, it's just to bless one life.
I love that. I talk a lot about forgiveness. Forgiving my dad and bringing him back in my life has been such a blessing, not just to me, but to the grandchildren. He calls them all now, not just my kids, the other grandkids on Sundays, and they love it every Sunday. And it's just been so neat. And just spending time with him and seeing what he can teach them, because he is a changed person. All right, Brian, I want to make sure people have your website. They can find you, The 7 Rings, A Journey to a Balanced Life of Peace, Passion, and Purpose. Congratulations, Brian Watson.
Thank you so much. Appreciate being on your show.
Website?
The7rings.com, and you can get it in hard copy, and you can also download it from Audible as well.
Awesome. God bless you, Brian Watson.
Thank you. You
Be
too.
right back.